starting Standing Rock, getting it going and holding it. Helping people learn traditional Lakota ways in the camp, and doing so much behind the scenes. She co-founded the Women of All Red Nations, which is an arm of the women's arm of AIM, the American Indian Movement. She was on the board of trustees for the National Museum of the American Indian in DC, and did a huge amount to make that happen. I'd like to invite Phyllis Young.
Chante washte nape chuzape. Mini kafeowi hemachiapi. Na mini yuhana juli hemachiapi. I want to first of all thank you for inviting me to come to speak at the national meeting of transitions, which is the first time that I, as an Indigenous person, have been invited to participate at the national level in an American city. I want to also acknowledge my relatives in Mini Sutta. Mini is water. Sutta is hard, or Ota is many. So this is Dakota territory. And I want to acknowledge my ancestors, 38 of them who were hanged in this state by executive order. The largest mass execution of Indian people in this country were part of Oceti. So, and created the clinic that became world-renowned, the Mayo Clinic, that did the research on all the bones of the 38 hanged to advance the noble practice of medicine. So even after death and after hanging, my relatives contributed in a good way to this country. So I want to acknowledge them and this place where I came. But I want to start out by saying we have been continuing our life struggle. We have always had partners. We have always had good Americans that have helped us in our struggle. So I never forget, 1985 we founded the Cowboys and Indians Alliance, the CIA, in the Black Hills. We still have that. We renewed our spirit and our partnership once again. So we stand with the Cowboys in Nebraska in treaty territory. We have their backs. So we have been fighting. I want to just, for the record, I'm a former tribal council member, duly elected by our people for 4 years. I have a free spirit that could not sit in a square box on a routine basis. So I didn't run for that office, but I run again, but I do support the democracy and free elections in my homeland. So this is what this is about. This is about redefining our democracy. As Native people, we have fought vigorously and have been vigilant to protect the principles at the highest level. And we said that in the camp. And I will always acknowledge the Americans who stood in the front line for us, with us, and for us. So I thank those of you who are in the front lines, in your front yard and in your backyard to protect the land and the resources that we need to live as human beings. At Standing Rock, we faced 55 applications for pipelines to cross the river. And we have to stop it. And Dakota Access, being a road pipeline that took our name, Dakota, my nationality, for their name, for their pipeline. So that's one lawsuit that we are pursuing for what it's worth in this system of unilateral taking. Of 57 lawsuits that we are pursuing. So since 2007, we have been fighting for pipelines. The northern border pipe gas line, the Keystone XL, the Keystone, and Dakota Access. So after 10 years, you get tired of rhetoric and dialogue that is meaningless. So we struggled for those 10 years, and this led to the camp, which is based on traditional law. And we had to go back to the 7 council fires, which is our traditional governance. Ocheti Shakoi predates the Constitution of the United States. It's based on our ancestral and the natural law. So we had to create that camp, and the 7 council fires had not convened for over 150 years. For us, it was very historic. And there were 416 indigenous nations that brought their flags and came to us to support us. We started out with just a camp that we thought we would set up our traditional camp on the river, and our struggle would begin for us. We never envisioned that 13,000 would ultimately come from all over the world to support us. So we didn't have time to organize or to plan or to name you to a different committee. I said earlier, we just had to put on our best human behavior and provide in accordance with our cultural values and system, which is based on necessity. That is the beauty of our culture, is necessity. And that's a message to us as a people, that water is a necessity, most basic. You can't eat the green money, but we need to create green across the land for our food. So that was a result of 10 years, 4 pipelines, and what Dakota Access did was go through the motions of the doctrine of discovery. So for those of you who are not familiar with the history, the doctrine of discovery is 5 papal bulls that was signed for Columbus when he came here, which says that we are wandering beasts, that we are subhuman, that we were never considered a race till we declared it in Geneva at the Human Rights Commission in 1977, that we are the red race of the Western Hemisphere, that we are beautiful human beings, that we demand a seat at the table for all humanity. we had to go through the exercises for ourselves. So those papal bulls were challenging the Pope today to review them and to revoke them because they are what dictated from the church to the state, which is a violation of the Constitution, to allow slavery, to legalize slavery for Black people and for indigenous people in this hemisphere. So if the Pope today can bring the scientists and the Catholic priests together to review the interference by the church in Galileo's scientific endeavors, in this day and age, we challenge the Holy See to review the doctrine of discovery. And for those of you who believe in the Constitution of this country, there is a small provision in there in a foreign language, and I challenge you, look for it tonight as soon as we leave. That describes what we are, and truthfully what we are not. So when I say ultimately, nothing short of changing the Constitution, to omit that and building walls in this country, tell me about it. The first wall built in America was around Manhattan, so that the Indians would not enter into New York. The first wall, it is now called Wall Street. So when we stay in New York, we say, what side of the wall did you stay on? Did you fall off the wall? So wall is common to indigenous people. We were the first ones who had the wall in New York City. So Trump is not a unique thinker to create a wall. Gonna use taxpayer money for it though. So we have been struggling since Columbus arrived here, and nothing short of revoking the doctrine of discovery, because we are a beautiful race of people. We have a beautiful language. We have beautiful spirituality. And our spirituality was banned by government policy for 60 years, from 1910 to 1978. We had to petition the Congress to enact the Indian Religious Freedom Act in 1978. And thank you to the underground and our people who kept the secrets and the language and the mysteries for us to continue. Today, I represent the 1% left. We are the survivors of every atrocity, every massacre, every battle. And we are calling to Americans to stop the wars, because America has no collective memory of peace. We as Native people do not have a collective memory of peace. We have a collective memory of war and trauma. And physiologically, I learned a new word, English. I thought I knew English pretty good, but physiologically, it has affected us. And so it's only been 40 years that we went through our infancy and our adolescence, and now we are full adults spiritually. We took back our spirituality. It's not enough to go to the God box on the corner of the street once a week and say, I'm sorry, and go back and do it again. Our spirituality is every moment, every day. The morning star, the evening star. And so, it is a spiritual movement. For me, it was the spiritual base that kept the peace at the camp. We just came from Boston. We got the Disobedience Award from MIT. And I most graciously accepted it because I've been disobedient all my life. And it was finally appropriate I got an award for that. So I want to say that we are about decolonization. It just means taking away what Columbus, what life he made for us. And that's what your struggle is, but you have a different name for it. And I saw the agenda. I'm supposed to talk about that a little bit more tomorrow, but the camp, we opened it, Stone Camp, April 1st, and by December we had to expand to Oceti-Sakowin, which is Army Corps land, but we still own the mineral rights, and it was originally our Aboriginal territory, so we moved there because there were so many people who came. So the Veterans for Peace came on December 4th. There were, we kept it at 1,300 because we had to provide space and beds and food for them. We capped it finally at 2,000 veterans. 3,000 came. And when the storms came and hit, we had to provide 5 of our communities to open their buildings to provide space for them. There were additional 2,000 who did not come. There were 16 cities on the waiting list to come. Those 16 cities and those 2,000 veterans didn't come, but they were planning on coming, so we could not provide for the overflow for the people who were coming, and the majority were Americans. So in my twilight years, I have to claim my citizenship as an American. We are dual citizens under the Treaty of 1868. Article 13, we are American citizens tied to the land, but we retain our citizenship as Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota. Our people, the Oceti-Sakowin, the 7 Council Fires, we have 14 territories in the United States, including 3 or 4 here in Minnesota, and 9 communities in Canada. So when Sitting Bull fled this country, he petitioned for refuge under the Queen of England, which she denied, but he stayed in Canada. So all of those territories and all those communities are who gathered for the first time in 150 years in Standing Rock. In Standing Rock, we are Hunkpapa, Sitting Bull's people. Hunkpapa is the horn of the buffalo. And so we have an obligation to be the vanguard and the protectors of Oceti-Sakowin. And we did that at Standing Rock. We are also Ihunktawa, the people on the edge. So we serve as the ambassadors to the outside world. And we did that at Standing Rock. We had an obligation. But I suppose I should explain the women and the parenthood that we talk about. So we took back our spirituality. And in that, we acknowledge that we are a universal people, that we are a pluralistic society, and that encompasses all. So, based on our spirituality, which manifests itself into humanity, that has to happen before universal standards. So we need to get there. So we took back our spirituality. So the thunder beings, we refer to the thunder beings as the thunder, the lightning, the clouds, the hail, the rain, the wind. They are all what we would call as the greater mysteries. They're the universal mystery that have the greatest power of all over humanity and the universe. So, in this day and age of climate change, we talk about the thunder beings. And those are our ancestors. So we pray to them. And so people, general terminology is bad storm. They're all horrified when storms come. But we prayed to the Oyate, the Wakia Oyate, the thunder beings, during the camp. And that storm that you would know came 6 times. So it created a time when we all had to stop doing what we were doing, regardless of who you were. So the wind is the female. She likes to play. She's mischievous, and she doesn't abide by anybody's rules. And as the female, she's the circle in the hurricane. She's the eye of the storm, the tornado. And we have to acknowledge her because
and allies.
She's the sign.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you, all of you, this evening. I received a call from my sister, Phyllis Young, a couple of nights ago. And she said, "I need you, can you be here with us?" So I was happy that I was available, and it's always an honor to stand with my sister-in-law, Phyllis Young. As I was flying into your beautiful city yesterday afternoon, I was reminded of my late husband, Russell Means. In 1974, he and Dennis Banks were on trial here in St. Paul for 8 months. It was the leadership trials for Wounded Knee 1973. Judge Nichols heard the case, and in the end, after 8 months, he reprimanded the government and he threw the charges out based on fabricated evidence, altered evidence, withholding evidence, coercing witnesses, etc., etc., etc. The American Indian Movement trials were the first to expose the graft and corruption of your government. What followed was then U.S. Senator Frank Church's Select Committee, Senate Select Committee, to investigate other ongoing graft and corruption within the government. We have a long history, a painful history, for both of us. The indigenous peoples and the American people. My sister addressed the basis of this inhumane, racist, unconscionable doctrine of discovery. In order for us to heal, we need to address that. We need to rescind that doctrine so that we can all move together collectively as a human family. There's a lot of unknown about the Indigenous world. My late husband spoke very passionately, very loudly, and very often about these truths, historical truths. And he was considered controversial, a radical, dangerous. Makes me wonder, what's wrong with a society that labels the truth as controversial? Well, here we are in the 21st century. Thanks to our ancestors who are at the forefront of the various struggles that enabled us to be here today. And as my sister mentioned, we are 1% of the population of America today. That's 99% genocide. The renowned late legal scholar Felix said it best: the American Indian is the miner's canary. And we just witnessed that again at Standing Rock. I want to apologize for the poor streaming of our documentary, The Women at Standing Rock. The End of the Line is the title. I'm executive producer on the project. I didn't set out to make a movie, but it found me. My late husband was in the arts, all form of arts. He found great love for moving picture and the stage. And we recognize the power of the media and how it can convey messages and stories, and how we need to get involved as Indigenous peoples in framing the narratives that are coming out. To continue to educate the masses so that we can begin this journey of healing, of reconciliation. We know about you. We know about your history. It was forced upon us. But you know nothing of us as Indigenous peoples. "97% of us come from matrilineal social systems. That is not the flip side to patriarchy. It's a society that's based on balance. We recognize the interconnectedness of all of life. The two-legged, the four-legged, the water, the winged, and those that crawl within our grandmother, the earth. We recognize the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, the mineral kingdom. We, the two-legged human, we need all of these to survive, yet they would flourish without man. That is a very simple teaching that puts it into perspective very quickly. In matrilineal societies, we have gender roles. Those gender roles are respect. We know we process different than our male counterpart. We don't try to emulate them. We recognize our differences, and then we can celebrate the differences. That's how you maintain balance. We're in the 21st century, and our grandmother, the earth, is suffering, is struggling, is out of balance because of the two-leggeds. The only life form that has forgotten its original instructions from the Creator. We're at a time that's humbling. We're at a crossroads. If we'll be able to continue with our grandmother as she goes through her cleansing and hopefully rebirthing. It's a time to reflect. It's a time to look within. As Indigenous peoples, we come from oral societies, which forces children at a young age to develop both their imagination, their intellectual mind, and their heart. We connect our heart with our brain. That's balance. Western science talks about the right brain, the left brain, and creates a separation. Intellectually, you can convince yourself of anything. But if you listen to your heart, you're going to know the truth. And that's what the invader cannot control, is what's in your heart. My late husband often said, the first step in freedom is you're free to be responsible. If each one of us takes individual, personal responsibility, we know that like attracts like, and here we are today with organizations such as yours. That makes my heart feel warm. Allies that recognize what we've always known. And I thank you for inviting us to the table. As Phyllis indicated, our societies are very inclusive. They include all of our human family. When the invader came to Turtle Island, we reached out. We recognized this is a relative with a different vision. We have a saying with our people. We may not understand your vision, but we respect it. And that's all we've ever asked, is to be respected. And here we are at the 11th hour. And our brothers and sisters are finally looking to us and saying, what is it you primitives were talking about? One of the last things Russell said to me was, "Hun, this is your time. This is the time of the women." Many of our stories, our prophecies, speak of this time. We call it the time of the female. And what that represents is a heightened, refined energy, one that resonates with love, compassion, nurturing, respect. So we're in a new time, and we have beautiful opportunities to embrace. We reach out to you as allies. We welcome you in our homelands so that we might move together as the Creator intended. I thank you for your hearts, your spirit, the good words we've heard at your workshop. We look forward to furthering the relationships. Thank you. Mitakyo asen. We're all related.
We have 8 communities, 4 of which are on the Missouri River. We have 107 miles of shoreline. We are connected to Cheyenne River, who has over 200 miles. So our land base is 2.3 million acres, and our population that resides there is close to 9,000, and the off reservation is also 9,000, so we're close to 18,000 total population for ours, our homeland Standing Rock. We're 4 bands of Ocheti Shakoi. We are Hunkpapa, Ihunktua, Ihunktuana, and we're Blackfoot. So we have those bands who reside, and we have 11 schools. Standing Rock have had high priority on education, so they have invested. We have been historically a very poor tribe, and our people have invested $1 million in education since 1960. Right now it's 1.5 million. We support college education, graduate. We have doctors and lawyers. We have Princeton grad, Harvard grad, all of the Ivy League schools. Education has been primary. We have a education code, and we're now talking about changing the status of or the objective of careers and getting your education, but we're also teaching cultural competency, and the state of North Dakota has embraced that objective so that teachers will follow the state of Montana to incorporate the tribal histories and the language and have standards for the Indian venue that they're creating in education throughout. So we have teachers. We have at Standing Rock today. We are in court. We are in federal district court in Washington, D.C. to determine the treaty rights, hunting rights, fishing rights, and treaty rights. We're back and forth right now for the month of June and July. We don't know what the outcome will be. It has been totally against us up until now. They were forced to stop because of the environmental justice that we talked about. We are facing the cuts from the federal government. We have over 400 programs funded by the federal government and federal contracts. We're trying to get off of that system where we don't have to go stand in line for appropriations in Congress. We want the revenue from all of our properties on the river and the land, so we're going in that direction. So right now, I think all of Indian country understands the stalemate that occurs when there's elections coming up. We have young, promising men and women who are, freedom is in our DNA. So we used to call it fighters, but that was when you had the rhetoric of the male, will fight to the death and will kill somebody. But the women, it's about life, and so our rallying cry is we want to live. So we'll see in September. At any rate, all of the objectives that have been created in energy, hydropower, all of the development that has occurred since Standing Rock, since the camps have closed. We are moving aggressively. As I said, in September we'll have a water summit. In October we'll have possibly the Dakota MIT Summit on technology. We're looking at the 3D printer to build homes. We're looking at co-fusion, all of it. So we're creating partnerships across the land, and we welcomed everyone who could offer something constructively to be a part of our partnerships. So we're moving forward in the courts, and we're working hard on responding to the GAO investigation of all the federal agencies and what their responses were regarding DAPO. So that's a big document that we're going to have to put together to address the Congress and the different committees that will be addressing the GAO report request. So a lot of paperwork, a lot of energy that we have to. We have a college, we have Sitting Bull College, and so we're still in poverty. We're facing the cuts of food stamps, the elderly meals. A lot of our budget has been cut. So the casinos are no longer as prosperous, and it's all based on the economy of this country. And we are preparing for food security, trying to build, for 6 years, I know I have 8 gardens around my area, my home, and it's my daughters all experimenting on what plants to grow, and they've been testing the different corn, the traditional corn, the old, non-hybrid corn. So we're making efforts on growing our own food, having gardens. Cannonball School has a garden for about 4 years now, and so there's some innovative things happening. There's an organized youth council. The vice chair of the youth council just left to visit Portugal with her mother. Our people have been invited all over the country, all over the world. So we have delegations leaving for Norway, Switzerland, Finland, South Africa, places all over the world. So our people are traveling, but we're creating ambassadors so that they can tell the story and share and create partnerships throughout the world on what we can do in unity for the betterment of all of our people.
Knowing what you know about what we're doing here in the transition movement, what is your perspective on this work that the folks that are here are engaged with, and what advice might you have for us?
I love it, and I applaud you for it, and it's about time. My advice is start with yourself, your family, your extended family, your community, and it grows from there. If you keep it with just yourself, you're not only forced to look at what's in your own backyard, but it keeps it from becoming overwhelming. Like attracts like, and the movement will just continue to grow, and you'll have like-minded people join in with you. So stay close to your heart. It's not what do I think, it's how do I feel.
I'll just add by saying that America needs a methodology to protect not only your backyard, but your front yard. And so at Standing Rock, we created the Social Impact Assessment, the SIA, which is something they almost created when the Exxon Valdez happened in the Tlingit village in Alaska. They almost mandated that you have to have this requirement in order to have development. So at Standing Rock, we adopted the Social Impact Assessment, adding to the treaty provision of assessment, putting in front of their social impact. So I believe that that's one of the legislative things that we could do across America is create a social impact assessment, a methodology that would stop pipelines, and they would have to be told by you what those social impacts mean. So it's about human life and clean drinking water. So that's my advice to you. Thank you.
Thank you.